Hello, everyone. And we're about to get started with the 7th edition and penultimate edition of the Dariel conference. I'm Peter. I'm standing in for Anine today. She's attending to some personal matters that will always take precedence, obviously, over things like this. But I hope I can step into her big shoes. She's an excellent host, and she's done a fantastic job up until now. It is my great pleasure to welcome you guys to this edition of the conference, where we're going to have some amazing speakers. We've got 3 talks ahead of us with 4 speakers. That's efficiency for you. We're going to start off with Luigi Malgas, who's going to talk us through comfort zones, how to get out of them and why we should get out of them. Then we're going to move over to Kea Mazui, who's going to talk to us about her graduate journey. And then finally, we're going to hand over to Alison and Lucy. That's Alison Palmer and Lucy Huxham. They're going to talk to us about whether you can be over-engaged at work and whether there is such a thing as work-life balance. So, without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Luigi, who's going to start talking to us about comfort zones.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. I'm Luigi Malgas, a senior software developer at Dariel, and my presentation will be on something that resonates very deeply with me in my personal life, and that is the concept of comfort zones and how to get out of them. So to start off with, I think we should go back to the basics and define what we terminalize as the comfort zone. So the comfort zone is a behavioral state within which a person operates in an anxiety-neutral condition, using a limited set of behaviors to deliver a steady level of performance, usually without a sense of risk. It is a place, a state in which you feel at ease, there's lowered stress levels and far less anxiety. You perform adequately at whatever it is you do, whichever is in this comfort zone state. And your performance is at an adequate level. There's no, touching out of boundary stuff. The knowledge that you have, you use, and everything is fine and hunky-dory. It's kind of the flute playing stage in your life. So the question that I pose is, why is it that everyone keeps telling us to get out of this zone? And to start on this, we'll dive into what we see as the zones of exploration. So the image of that the comfort zone model is a very well-known and used model by Benushi in his 2007 article, which he then describes this and places people into a zone within any life domain that they might be exploring things in, or that they might be trying to expose themselves further towards. So we have 3 zones. It's the comfort zone, which is your state of sort of, plateauing, your normal level state, no stress, no anxiety. Your performance is adequate, as mentioned before. And then we have a stretch zone or a growth zone. And in this zone, this is where we start learning new skills, developing our personalities, developing new goals, and placing ourselves into a more fear-driven, or not fear-driven, but a more fear-facing, fear-focused zone in our lives. And this is where we start developing better ways to deal with things, how we grow ourselves mentally and in a more mature capacity. And then we have a panic zone. So a panic zone can stem from 2 things. One, it can mean that we're overstretching ourselves from the growth zone, and we reach a sort of panic and we sort of plateau in our performance or in our likelihood of achieving certain things. But the panic zone can also mean that we are treading towards making our comfort zones bigger. So further onto this, there's also a strong cognizance for us to stay in this comfort zone, and I want to explore a bit of the psychology of that and why it is we want to stay in this comfort zone. The one fact is that we will tend to avoid confronting certain things. Sorry about that. So we'll tend to avoid confronting certain things in our lives, whether that's, shifting ourselves from, an example for myself, from mountain bike racing, from doing a 50 kilometer to doing a 100 kilometer, because we know that that means we must peak our endurance, we have to exercise more, we have to do certain things more than what we would usually do. So we try to avoid those confrontations, those challenges, and stay in this state of adequacy. It's also much safer in this zone, so we're not exposed to too much. What we know is what we know, and we perform well on what we know. We're also in a state of no pain, so we're not leaving our safety net, and it's not an easy thing to do. So hence we always try to push towards a point where we feel safer, we feel less hurt, we feel like we're not being criticized, we're not challenging ourselves in any way. And that to me is what it means to stay in this comfort zone. But it is important to move out of this comfort zone from time to time. It's important to know that not all that feels good is good. It's important to know that we need to sometimes push ourselves so that we can grow and we can exceed our own expectations. But the comfort zone is not a bad place, because it is a place where we can celebrate our achievements, we process what we've learned, the knowledge we've gained, and we can prepare ourselves to take on the next challenge in our lives. But there is a huge risk when stepping out of the comfort zone, because once we step out of this comfort zone and we expose ourselves to to failure, to not being successful at that big test that we want to write, to not actually riding that 100 kilometer and getting a hamstring, at the 60 kilometer point. These things are real, and that's what happens when we shift ourselves from a level of comfort to a zone of discovery. Because in this discovery, in this growth, in this shifting point, this is where we develop ourselves. We develop ourselves, one, as individuals. We fail, we succeed, we jump from going through peaks and troughs and plateaus on this journey, and these things are what grow us. It makes us better, it makes us stronger as individuals, and you'll see the shift when you master it in one part of your life, that it shifts over to another domain in your life. So for example, taking on a new diet, once you master diet, you become better at physical activity because you've got more energy, and it has this rippling effect throughout our lives, because we gain what we call a force of forward motion. And it's also important to know that this force of forward motion is not the same for all of us. We don't all have the same drive. For me, small successes might drive me, but for someone else, hearing from their parents or their siblings or friends that they are doing a good job is what drives them, and that brings them, or brings the motivation upon themselves to push and push and push to the next level. And it's important, again, to know that you don't have to over exceed and push yourself beyond your boundaries. We all have our own boundaries. Our growth is different. My path is not your path. But we have to, as humans, grow. And we need to know that we need to try and get out of our comfort zones and go out there and discover our own momentum, our own force of forward motion. And what does this mean for us as developers, and in terms of developing our skills? For one, our industry, the IT industry, is ever changing, and more so in software engineering. We see, especially we've seen it in a batch of like 2 to 3 years with JavaScript, where we had a ton of new frameworks coming out, from Angular to, Angular being one of the biggest ones. And we needed to shift our learning from raw JavaScript and jQuery to, learning Angular and how to implement NPM packages and all of these things. That's a shift from comfort into your growth zone, into a point of growing and bettering your skills, building on your skills. And it helps us in setting and attaining better goals. And this is important for career growth, because only in that sense, especially in our industry, can we grow and can we better ourselves. And we all have the potential to do this, and we all have potential to become so much more in our line of work and in every realm of life in that sense, if we look at these zones that we need to explore. And we need to know that, again, not everyone's growth is the same. And with that, I just want to leave you with this saying from Alex Honnold. So he is one of the craziest mountain climbers out there. And he set way too many goals for himself. I don't even know if he can get out of his comforts anymore, or that has become his comfort zone. But he says that his comfort zone is like a bubble around him. And I've pushed it in different directions and made it bigger and bigger until these objectives that seem totally crazy eventually fall within the realm of the possibilities. And with that, I thank you. And thank you again for the opportunity. And if there are any questions, please let me know.
Great job. Thanks so much, Luigi. That was very informative. A lot of stuff I learned about you and also about comfort zones. I wanted to ask you, so do you know if there's specific times when people are maybe more open or more driven to growth? I ask because I see quite a lot of people speaking to me as a recruiter on their work anniversaries and on their birthdays.
Well, yeah, I guess it's you're more prone to it when you start feeling that there's the sense of forward motion, or we call it forced forward motion, because and I see if it's your birthday, you tend to think that, wow, I haven't accomplished as much as I would have liked to. So that becomes your motivation to push yourself out of that zone and into a growth zone, because then you want to learn a new skill. But I think the big thing is just giving yourself the push. People wait for that point, but you have the ability to push yourself within you. And that's the important thing.
And it's even just taking that first small step, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, on that note, I'm going to probably go and hit the gym after this this event. So apologies in advance past Alison, who I know is listening. Manda said, didn't Google do research on new starts? What about the research, Manda? In terms of what, their motivation or panic zone? I'm sure Google have done lots of research on lots of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't quite understand that one.
If it is about comfort or discomfort of new starts, there's a lot of information around how well you start determining how well the rest of your career goes. I'm not sure if that's true for people who are more experienced, or if it's just the grads or junior people starting their careers. But the first 90 days are quite important.
Yeah, and it's also important to know that even though it's not a literal step, you need to do planning, and that's what the comfort zone is for. Okay, there is responded.
Yeah, Monday's in the first day of a season, like to start new things. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's weird that the idea of weekdays are entirely, a concept that we've come up with, a human concept. But Tuesdays are a thing in my life. Okay, do we have any other questions, or are we ready to hear from hold on, there we go. From Dean, should one tackle their mental state before attempting to tackle their comfort zone, or do they go hand in hand? Great question.
Cool. Yeah. So I think that the mental state is your comfort zone. Again, it's a conceptualized model that we've come up with. It's just that in that zone we become so complacent with where we are that we don't tend to move forth on that. So the important thing is to plan for your next step and know what your next step is. So it's not just granules jumping out at something and tackling it. I mean, everything comes with a plan. And I mean, it's a famous saying, if you don't plan, you plan to fail. So if you're going to step out into the growth zone without planning, you will tend to fail. I won't say you will fail, and that will just push you back into another comfort zone.
Yeah, or demotivate you to go, I don't know, into the middle of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. Next up, we've got Kea. Kea is a relatively new Darelian, but we had a nice sneak preview of her talk yesterday and she's soon to be the poet laureate of Dariel. The way she tells the story is beautiful. It's almost poetic. And it's all about her journey from not knowing what she was doing into a fully formed Dariel developer. So I'm going to hand over to her now.
Thank you so much for the great introduction, Peter. I guess I'll get started on my poetic justice. The year is 2019. I had just graduated from my second qualification, and naturally, to most, this is a good thing, an exciting thing. But it really wasn't for me. You see, at this time and at the age I was at, I figured I'd be a whole lot further. I mean, why put such unrealistic expectations to myself, right? I mean, everyone has their own path, their own timeline. But truthfully, I just felt old. I didn't even have a plan when I graduated, or even steps on how to achieve a plan. I was probably older than most of my classmates, and they seemed to have things figured out. I mean, these people had jobs lined up when they graduated. I didn't even know what I wanted to have for breakfast. Around this time, you start to feel a bit of pressure and a little bit of doubt. And you realize you need a plan, and you need a plan now. Let me formally introduce myself. My name is Kea Mazui, but you can call me Kea. And this is my journey so far. You see, as an introvert, it takes a lot of work to get me mentally ready for any environment, even if it is with my friends. So you can imagine I'm hanging out with my friends and having them complain about their jobs, or how their company isn't investing in them and their growth, or how they're spending hours in a place that they don't want to be. You see, now this puts stress on me, because now I'm thinking I'm a 24-year-old introvert and I have no leg to stand on. So I can't be picky on the jobs that I get, but I don't want to be unhappy, but yet I can't afford to disappoint the people who support me. I needed a company that believed or will invest in my technical potential, but also my personal growth. And this is when I had my interview with Dariel. This was my first technical interview, and by far the most intimidating. It was intimidating because I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to feel like all the work I did to graduate was just not good enough. I, like most, wanted to be valuable. But good news came. I got the job. So now what? You see, working in itself was another adjustment, because now I'm thinking I have to spend hours on end with humans. You see, here's the thing. I have a social tank, and when it runs on empty, I go silent. And when I go silent, I go comfortable. And when I get comfortable, I will not go out of my way to make conversation. But you see, this tends to make other people uncomfortable. So now I need to mentally prepare myself for this change, and that I did. I admit, when I started my graduate program, I came in with a flawed mindset. I wanted to have the senior knowledge at a graduate level. Unrealistic? Possibly, but it just seemed like where I should be. But you see, working was a humbling experience, because here you realize the seniors themselves, they still learning. They don't have it all figured out. That was mind-blowing. The first project I was assigned was an interesting one, but there were a couple of facts that I had to face. first. One being that I was entering in a project that probably had its foundation, and I knew nothing about it. Two, I'll be working with people that I don't know. And three, I'll be using tools that I've never used before. I mean, who am I kidding? I've never even heard of these tools before. And the tools that I started learning about is Angular and Spring Boot. I have probably never asked as much questions as I did on this project, but I am glad that Mike and Dirk were patient enough to deal with it. They had been very helpful and willing to teach, and I really appreciated that. So days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months. At this point, I'm feeling pretty good because I think that got a rhythm going. But surprise, surprise, COVID happens. Now I'm faced with another shift. Now, don't get me wrong, working from home has its fair share of benefits. I mean, for someone like me who lives in what feels like the other side of the world, I didn't have to deal with traffic, which is a bonus. I didn't have to wake up early, bonus. But yet, I had to mentally prepare myself for this new change. You see, as beneficial as this was, I'm now entering into an environment that has no structure. Now I didn't have the comfort of knowing what my day looked like because now it was flexible to change. Now all of a sudden, I'm free to be at the beck and call of my family. Some of you might have taken these opportunities to get things done during the day. Some things you probably wouldn't have been able to do when you went to the office. And as great as this seems, working remotely has actually been a bit more stressful for me. But not all is dark and gloomy, because despite my comfortable issues, I still wanted to grow. So I took it upon myself to reach out to different people within the organization and get advice about how I can go about building my career and what I needed to focus on. And it turns out the best thing you can do for yourself is practice, practice, practice. Don't think that going to work Monday to Friday for 8 or so hours automatically means growth. I think this is something that I took for granted, that growth just happens. But much like my personal life, I need to put in work in order to grow in my professional one. So as you can see, there's a lot of things I still need to learn and a lot of changes I need to make to my mindset. I'm learning that I can't already be at the end of my journey, but I need to take the steps and appreciate those stages that I'm going through. None of it is easy, but I'm glad I have a good support system around me that is willing and able to help. So what I'm trying to always remember is action is the fundamental key to success. Thank you.
Great job. Kea, thank you very much. I've actually got a quote over there that says, inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. Also from Picasso. So he definitely said that. So Kea, I wanted to find out, I mean, so this was your first technical interview?
Yes, it was.
Sure, in the deep end, hey?
I know, they just pushed me right in there.
What would be your one piece of advice for someone who finds himself in a similar situation?
I think much like myself, it's just, you just got to take that step. As difficult and as hard as it seems, you just have to keep moving, because I think the only constant is change. So you just gotta
push. Gotta take that first step. Like this dovetails beautifully into what Luigi was saying. And I think that that's probably going to be the big takeaway here, is to find that drive within yourself and take that first step. A couple of interesting comments here. Jeff said that you'll always have new things to learn from both your seniors and your juniors. Wayne mentions the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert at something. And Valerie Hodan said, nice presentation, Kea, which I absolutely agree with.
Thank you so much.
Does anyone have any other questions? Verbally, obviously, it's a lot easier to ask a long question than typing one out. But we'll see if people are still typing. Last time I moved too quickly. Maybe I'll move too slowly this time. Kea, it looks like a bulletproof presentation. No questions. Well done. Well, then that brings us to my highlight, because it's my boss who's going to be presenting next. Alison Palmer and Lucy Huxham, our HR, head of HR and our marketing department, will be up next. They're going to say it much better than I can, so I'm just going to hand it straight over to them, and they're going to teach you some things.
Thank you, Peter.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, guys. I'm Lucy Huxham. I'm the marketing department and cat herder extraordinaire.
And I'm Alison Palmer. I'm the head of HR. And thanks to our host, Peter, I seem to have acquired the title of the moral high ground at Dariel.
Thanks for joining us, guys. So I'm not sure about you, but for me, since I started working, work-life balance has been the way to do it. Do it all and do it all well. But after nearly 12 years of trying and failing at finding this balance, we've decided to unpack this theory. The theory behind this buzzword is that when we begin adulting, we require time for work and the other aspects of life. Massive focus on work and everything else, life, you know? So to try and understand this, I went and researched the origins of work-life balance. So this idea that rest is vital for a productive work week goes back millennia. But we are now in the 1800s, during and following the Industrial Revolution, and the industrialists and the unions agreed workers needed a day off. What generous gods. This later became 2 days off. Guys, we're getting there. Soon will be 4 days off and working 3. So work in those days was mainly manual labor, and once workers left the site, they also left their work behind. The actual phrase work-life balance is actually more recent in its origin. It first appeared in the 80s as a plank in the women's liberation movement. They were advocating for flexible schedules and maternity leave for women, as men were socially unburdened to pursue their careers without worrying about housekeeping or raising a family. Working women were expected to work, maintain their homes, and spawn millions of children. And even though, despite voicing their needs, the women's liberation movement experienced very little relief in their demands. In today's world, work-life balance incorporates both issues and strategies aimed at effective time management, and it's also expanded into burnout prevention and stress management. Working in companies today, employees are striving for this unattainable balance, and it's actually, what we're finding is it is exactly that, completely unattainable. So while Dolly Parton somehow got her working 9 till 5 right, for the rest of us, we should really be looking at work-life balance. Work-life rhythm. Work-life rhythm is more realistic to strive for. It's the idea that instead of balance, you look at rhythm as a more accurate representation of your days, weeks, and months. Sometimes work wins, sometimes life wins, but it can't always be both. So your geyser bursts, your cat needs to go to the vet, and your Wi-Fi packs up all in 1 week. And then the following week, you're up to your eyeballs in reports, and the only thing you can eat is popcorn. There are highs and there are lows and ebbs and flows. Check, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. There are times we need to run fast and there are times when we need to slow down. It's this idea of seasons during which different aspects of life take greater or lesser time and energy. Separating work from life and life from work is hard, as everything is intertwined, and especially in these COVID times, it's really hard to disengage and switch off at the end of the day. Negatory on the balance. if one embraces the concept of rhythm over balance, it can really change your outlook, because you're not striving to keep everything equal. You're striving to be able to manage what work or life is throwing at you. It can have a hugely positive effect on you and your life, and we really need to think differently about work and life and the impact it has on us. There's been an increased occurrence of presenteeism in the workplace. So presenteeism is this concept of being at work, but not actually being at work. So physically you're sitting there, but you're not present. And this can be because of many reasons, but it's usually personal circumstances, ill health, or any of those sort of type issues. But it's a double-edged sword. On the one side, you're not productive, but on the other side, you're not taking the time needed to recover in order for you to be productive. And I'm not talking about you tsotsies who are procrastinating and chilling on Facebook when you're meant to be putting reports together. I'm talking about those people who feel obligated to be at work when they are not okay. Presenteeism is much more difficult to measure than absenteeism, and presenteeism ends up affecting everyone else's productivity, morale, and engagement. And in the end, your company and its people are the ones who pay the costs. And without employee engagement, you have a tiny problem within your business. And Ali's going to talk us through these issues and the effects it has on companies.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Lucy. So there's so much information online and elsewhere about the importance of employee engagement, particularly now with so many of us working remotely. If you do an online search for the words employee engagement, it brings forth a plethora of articles and commentary from how training plays a key role in employee engagement to providing guidance on how to increase engagement in order to manage pandemic stress. This advice is handed out like Tic Tacs to anyone with a search engine, and high engagement figures are often lauded as the holy grail, promising employee happiness, reduction in stress levels, and increased morale. Employee engagement is a major concern for HR leaders and C-suite execs. We gobble up the research conducted by Gallup on a regular basis and workshop how to increase engagement levels in our organizations. Employee engagement has been linked to lower absenteeism, improved retention, and increased employee motivation, which ultimately results in increased productivity and profitability. Employee engagement is seen as a good thing. It improves trust, commitment, loyalty, and motivation. However, I have to wonder about the flip side of the coin. Harvard Business Review published an article in 2018 claiming that research shows 1 in 5 employees is highly engaged and at risk of burnout. So what are we saying? We want our people to be engaged, but we don't want them to be too engaged. That doesn't make any sense. So let's unpack that a wee bit. The study was conducted at Yale University and examined the levels of engagement and burnout in over 1,000 employees in the States. When analyzing the results of the study, both engaged and disengaged workers were found, but within the engaged group, there were clear distinctions that we need to have a look at. The first group of engaged workers was referred to as the optimally engaged and constituted 40% of the survey participants. They had high engagement levels and low levels of burnout. This group also reported high levels of positive emotions and the desire to acquire new skills. In addition to that, they reported low negative emotions or the intentions to look for another job. The second group of interest in the study is referred to as the engaged exhausted group. These participants showed high engagement levels and high levels of burnout. These workers were passionate about their work, but also had mixed feelings about it, reporting high levels of stress and frustration. And like the first group, this group showed the desire to acquire new skills, but they reported the highest intention to seek alternate employment. Although both groups indicated that they had the resources to do the job, as well as supervisor support, the high burnout in the second group has been attributed to higher demands on their concentration and attention, which is in contrast to the first group. So, organizations may be at risk of losing some of their most skilled, most passionate, most hardworking employees, not for lack of engagement, but because their high engagement level is combined with high stress, resulting in burnout and presenteeism that Lucy has already chatted to you about. We therefore cannot look only at engagement levels. Doing so in isolation and not looking at the larger picture of burnout symptoms is detrimental to the employees and ultimately the organization. In order to promote healthy engagement, it is crucial to provide employees with not only the resources they need to do their job well, but an opportunity to recover from work stressors. And how do we do this? Many organizations offer wellness programs, combating stress, encouraging healthy eating, regular exercise, and mindfulness. You've all heard this. But these fall short of addressing the problem at its core, as the biggest lever is the work itself. HR should be working with teams and line managers to monitor the level of demand being placed on our staff, as well as ensuring that they have the resources to do their job well, and not just material resources, but intangible resources such as empathy, friendship, understanding, and a genuine open door policy. At Dariel, the leadership team meet every day to discuss pressing issues, including the identification of staff who are under stress or who have been working long hours in order for us to address this. Line managers can assist in ensuring that employee goals are realistic. It is often the case that employees who, by virtue of being particularly skilled or productive, get given more tasks than their team members. Leaders can assist in putting structures in place in their teams that can prevent burnout, avoid emailing people after hours, set a precedent that evenings and weekends are work-free, time to connect with family, friends, and recharge, encourage a daily lunch break or maybe even a walk around the block. We have to be aware that the higher the work demands, the higher employees need for support, acknowledgement, and most importantly, opportunities for recovery. High engagement levels are certainly important, but more so is the prevention of burnout and presenteeism. So we all have a part to play. I'd rather we work towards smart engagement that promotes a healthy work-life rhythm.
Totally agree, Al. And like we said, remember guys, sometimes work wins and sometimes life wins, and that's okay. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think everyone is still processing because we had the least comments on that. Jeff did say that he values keeping to a regular work schedule where possible, because it ensures that he's able to do those extra hours at times when things are needed. And absolutely. I want to thank you guys today. I received a call saying that my washing machine had an issue. It turns out that a bolt had got stuck in between the two seals, so there was water all over my laundry. That's why I'm not in the office with you guys. But thank you very much. I mean, sometimes life wins, sometimes work wins is, I think, pretty much our philosophy as the leadership group at Dariel. Luckily, the people that we hire are dedicated to their work and passionate about their work. So we don't really have to worry that much about the work being done. Valerie has asked us, do you think that employers expect more now that everyone is at home?
I don't think employers expect more. I think as employees, we have the desire, well, we struggle to switch off. It was easier when we were based in the office and you had that break where you shut down your laptop, locked your office door and drove home or walked home or caught public transport home. And because we don't have that break anymore, I actually think that it's too easy for us to check emails again, to quickly just finish off something, to do something while we're cooking dinner. And this is why it's so important to get some kind of structure in place, to actually stop those additional hours piling up.
Yeah, that reflects exactly what Jeff then commented additionally. It's easy to get carried away with work and hard to push back to say, you can wait until tomorrow. I know that Eisenhower was famous for using the urgent versus important grid, so that he could decide what was needing to be done now and what could wait until tomorrow. But as Jeff says, most issues can wait until tomorrow.
Absolutely.
just because someone's shouting exceptionally loud doesn't mean that the world is actually burning down. Maybe their world is burning down, and you need to decide if their world is close enough to your world.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. Well, as a cat herder, I'm sure you often also get many other people's worlds on fire. Hey, Lucy?
Yeah, everyone's world's always on fire, and everyone's always very urgent and needed it yesterday. But that's just life. It's just what happens. It's good to be able to manage it and prioritize what you know, what I know is important for my marketing department versus what's good for Dariel versus what's good for the sales. You know what I mean? It's just about being able to openly communicate, have honest, open conversations, and be like, sorry, I really can't do that right now. I just can't.
I think it also comes with a little bit of experience to understand what should I leave and what shouldn't I leave. Yeah. Ben said something interesting. He said that he loved this and that he can confirm it, that there was that project that he worked on that nearly caused 2 people to leave, and he was one of them. I'm glad he hasn't. He's my fellow chili head captain. But the question is, how and where do we draw the line?
Okay, well, that's where the importance of that triangle comes in, where you've got HR, line managers, and leadership. Look, we all accept that when there's maybe a deadline or something happening, that we have to put in the extra time and the extra effort, but it should not be the norm. And I think as soon as it is the norm, as an employee, you should be able to raise it with somebody, you should be able to escalate it, but also the leadership team, in whichever capacity, should be putting those rituals in place, that structure in place, to ensure that everybody can switch off, that everybody does have time to recover. So that's really important from a leadership perspective.
Carl asks, I'm gonna answer his question with an interesting anecdote that I heard today, but should we be expressing to clients that email and WhatsApp should not be sent to our people after hours on weekends? I'd say yes. I've got a friend who runs her own business and she's on holiday, actually about to give birth to her first child. And she's got a auto emailer that refers them to WhatsApp if it's super urgent. And her WhatsApp then refers them back to email so that she can have a 2-week holiday. And people they don't respect that personal space in the slightest. So I mean, I do my best not to answer anyone after hours. But what are your thoughts around clients messaging our people?
I think, look, it goes back to like our conversation a little bit earlier around, everyone's building is on fire. It's about whose building is more on fire, I suppose. But I think that, you know what I mean? It's a tricky one, especially in the times we're living in now. You know what I mean? No one is seeing each other in person, really. We're all online. If that's how the communication is happening, via phones and emails and stuff. But I think it also just comes down to what is seen as like a priority. You know what I mean? Like, yes, the client may be burning down, but on a Saturday, unless the whole of the JSC is down, I feel like we can deal with it on Monday. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's dependent on what we're dealing with, but I just feel this like concept of always being online, always being available, and it gives everyone the idea that everything's on fire and you must be available right now and you must fix it right now. And I think we need to get away from that, because people need their time, people need their weekend, people need time to recover from a week.
Absolutely. And our working world has definitely changed because we have these wonderful pieces of technology. It's very easy never to switch off. Before technology, you would go to work, you would do your job in the factory, and you would leave and go home. And there was no way that your boss could track you down and remind you that you hadn't done something or that there was a problem at the factory. So I think we are our own worst enemy, because we want to deliver for the clients, we want to deliver quality, and we want to, meet the deadlines. Again, that is very, very important then for there to be structure, so that there is an agreement with the client. Maybe this is up to the portfolio manager or the tech lead to say to the client, okay, only if the world is burning, but then you call me, because then it allows that decision making to take place as well. Again, does this need to be addressed at 6 o'clock on a Sunday night, or can it wait till Monday? But I think we are our own worst enemy, and that's why the structure is so important. And it's almost, there needs to be an agreed set of rules to say, this is what we are going to do, this is what we're not going to do. So that if your phone does go at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, then you know there's a real problem.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a certain degree of the burden of leadership, and
Yeah.
you will need to take those, and you know, the more senior or the more people that you look after, the longer your working hours are going to be in general, because you've got your job to do, and then you've got to look after the people that are reliant on you looking after them. There's an interesting question from Johan saying, how about times when you know, a home crisis can occupy the typical core hours? You can make up for it before or after, but is that bad for burnout? And I can again say that yes, it is, because if you've got something that is weighing on your subconscious, it is wearing on you. It's going to break you down, and you'll need to find time to recover your emotional resources. I had a death in the family at the end of last year, and it took me a while to get back to full capacity because of the admin. Even after the emotions had normalized, there was a lot of admin that weighed on me. But as Jeff and Jacques say, poor planning on your part does not necessitate an emergency on mine. And that the inability of the clients to handle their emotions and separating what's urgent is not a good reason to sacrifice personal time.
Yeah.
If we can tie this back to the 10,000 hours, it's easier to sacrifice personal time when you are younger in your career, because you don't have as many commitments necessarily. I'm not going to generalize, but you know, I used to work 12 to 16-hour days when I started my career because I drank the 10,000 hour Kool-Aid, and I thought the quicker I get you, the quicker I will be an expert. But yeah, I think sometimes is the word that we need to leave this discussion with. Jeff says make sure sometimes work wins, sometimes life wins, but they are both sometimes. And then I think Carl probably put the points on the whole thing. Sometimes you're the pigeon, and sometimes you're the statue. If that is everything, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And we've got one more of these. Anine will be back. We can stick around and keep the chat going for a little while. But essentially, our video presentation is finished. Thank you all for attending. Thank you to our presenters. And may you all have a wonderful week and month further.